In Clocked In with the Press, we have top stories, sports news, and interviews. By nature, these interviews are subject to the opinions and beliefs of the participants. For objective news reports, check out the top stories or sports news episodes or our website at thepress.net. Welcome back to Clocked In with the Press, hosted at Altman Studios in Brentwood, California. In this podcast, we highlight news stories, individuals, and organizations in the community that deserve your attention. To stay updated on the latest Contra Costa County happenings, you can do so through our website at www.thepress.net or on our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. This is your host, Caitlin Gleason, clocking in. For the story of the day, we get to talk to Brandon Lawson, otherwise known as Will Scifi, author of Nova's Blade. Lawson has agreed to do an interview here on the podcast, and I am incredibly excited to be able to talk to him about his story. So, Brandon, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, to kind of start off, really simple, let's talk about your pen name. So, your pen name is Will Scifi, not Skiffy, Sci-Fi. Tell me why you chose that pen name.
So, honestly, it came from my dad because he said you should write a pen name because I have written in the past under Brandon Lawson. So he said you should do a pen name. So my first pen name was Eric B. Rogers. The reason why I chose Eric B. Rogers was because Eric is the name of Magneto, which is one of my favorite characters. B for Barry, which is Flash. Rogers for Steve Rogers. So
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love comic books. So those were my Magneto, Bear, Flash, and Captain America. I said Eric B. Rogers. I'm thinking that was kind of fresh. He texted me back and said, "You gotta do better than that." So then he gives me Will Scifi. And I'm like, Will, and he was like, because your middle name is Will, and it's sci-fi because that's the genre. And I had never heard of that. I'm like, Will Scifi, and I'm like, that's actually nice because what he was saying was it's rememberable. It's like discoverability. Because honestly, if you typed in my name right now, Brandon Lawson, you get things different. It's like a different Brandon Lawson. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to be in search availability. But with Will Scifi, there's only one Will Scifi. So that's why I stumbled upon that name, was just because of getting rememberable. You could like, oh, Will Scifi.
Yeah. So you're not just going to write the sci-fi, you're going to be the sci-fi.
Pen name wise, in terms of actually doing that, I didn't want to make it seem like, oh, I own sci-fi, right? No, but it was just, again, it was all about like marketability and memorability. Not in no way am I saying like making a statement with that name.
Of course not. But it definitely makes sense about kind of the way that it's a really catchy name, and people can be like, oh yeah, the sci-fi author Will Scifi.
Right.
So talking a little bit more about Nova's Blade and getting into kind of your writing process. How long did it take you to write Nova's Blade?
Oh, that took, let me think. So I started it August 2020. I finished the book in a month, but then 3 months, I took a break, and then like around December, I was like, okay, let me rewrite this. Let me get back into it. And then that started from December until like recently, like 2022, January, where I found...
That's a really long revision period.
Yeah.
How many times did you end up reworking it?
So just once, but what happened was because from December... I'm trying to think. I'm looking at the sky. I'm thinking from December to like January, I wasn't writing. I was more like looking at other stuff. So I was reading Hunger Games. I was actually watching episodes of Bachelor. Not to like say, okay, this is how I'm gonna do it, but more like, okay, let me understand what's out there, so I can get an idea of what's out there, so I can know what I want my book to be. So I see by watching Bachelor, I was like, okay, I don't want my book to be like that, because again, it's kind of like similar to that.
Right.
So the thing is, the editing, so Microsoft Word has editing time on their thing. So the editing time is around like 700 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that doesn't include, again, me reading Hunger Games, watching Bachelor, like doing outlines.
Yeah,
so
kind of gathering your inspiration and things like that.
Exactly. So it was just from August all the way till recently. But again, I was going to school. I'm going to school. Now I'm working a full-time job. So it was just like, I feel like if I didn't have to do those things, right? Like, cause when I was younger, when I was like 2016, I was like, just going to school. I wasn't working. So I feel like if I didn't have a job, it probably would have been easier.
Yeah. Ironically, one of the questions I had for you was that the story reminded me of Hunger Games and The Bachelor, so I was going to ask you about that. But so this way, since we've made those comparisons, though, why don't you give a really short elevator pitch to our audience about what the story is about?
Okay, so 32 women, one arena, a battle to the death. So basically, women have to fight each other to get married into a rich and powerful family, and the world believes it's free will, but it's not. So imagine if there was a show, live TV, where a bunch of women kill each other, and then like the winner marries into like some rich family. Just think of any rich family you know about, right? Just on top of your head, they get married into them, and we're like, this is so cool, true love and stuff, but in reality, it's not. And this isn't even a spoiler. It's actually on the back of the book. Oh, they're forced to do it, but the world doesn't know about it. The reason why I put it like that was because initially I was like, oh, killing each other. I'm thinking like, oh, that's kind of like cool in terms of like story-wise, not in real life, right?
Right.
But then my problem with that was I was like, how can readers empathize with a bunch of women who voluntarily sign up to kill each other? Like, who's going to empathize with a character who says, you know what, I'm going to kill somebody so I can get married? That's kind of sound greedy and selfish.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let me throw in the element that they forced to do it. But then I was like, wait a minute, but...
So it kind of promotes that idea of, women being forced into a particular system for marriage.
Exactly. That is, I like how you mentioned that, because I was, in a sense, kind of basing off of that. So I was like, using real world themes in this fictional story that sounds like, rings like to the real world.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So to talk about your characters, describe some of the characters for me and the audience.
Okay. So you have several, right? Before I get to the main character, we have like, let me think. I'm trying to think. Okay. You have Bellona, right? And some of these names are based off of like Greek gods, goddesses, and they kind of symbolize their name, like what that mean. Like, oh, who's the god of war? For females, Athena, and like I think Bellona. If I may be mistaken, but like similar to that. But Bellona, she's like this girl who's kind of like muscular in a sense, right? Very
she's jacked.
Yeah, she's like a female Ivan Drago, right, from Rocky. Basically unbeatable. So it's like one of those characters where you're like, oh, what's gonna happen when the main character has to fight her?
You're like, that's not happening.
Right. You're like, how you gonna beat them? So it's like that one character in all them like sports movies where they're like, oh, watch out for that person. They just
watch out for the tank.
yes. Like, or maybe like how like in that movie, I think like with Tom Hardy where they're like fighting MMA and they had that Kurt Angle guy, like he was just beating everyone.
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the name of that, but I do know what you're talking about.
So that's like pretty much her thing, right? But the thing is, there's certain scenes where you kind of like, you see she's more than just that, some just brute. She's not one-sided. It's most of the characters, they kind of like symbolize their name, but there's always that backstory. Another one was Ira. So Ira is like the goddess of like I think like craziness or something. So her whole thing is she's kind of like your Joker character where it's like, yo, they're forced to do this, but she kind of like, oh, this is like kind of like a Harley Quinn.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I was able to read a little bit past half of the book, and Ira was just such an interesting character. I was like, I don't know if I like you because you're so wild or you scare me. A little bit of both.
Right. And then Lysa, that name is again like goddess of maniac, but I took it to a different way. Instead of making her crazy in a sense where she enjoys this, she's crazy in a way where she's like, this is bad. They're all thinking like that, but she's just like over the top where it's like, I can't do this.
Because so she kind of like breaks because of it.
Exactly. And then you have Athena, who's that name is the goddess, I think goddess of war, and she's like, I mean, she's not like one, she's like feisty, right? Kind of like in a sense of like out there war driven like Bellona, but there's more, like you see a lot more to her. She's not like necessarily like up front, like where you're like, oh
yeah, she's very cunning and very intelligent.
Yes, in a sense. And then you have Elpis, which that name is the goddess of like, it's like, I think it's like it has something to do with like harmony or something. Yeah. And the reason I use her character is more of where it's like everyone's like all like at each other's throat. She's kind of like a stoic or like a you know what I mean?
Diplomat.
Not necessarily. That's another character, but she's more of a like, okay, this is what it is. You know what I mean? Let me.
Got it. So she's like, whatever,
right,
type deal.
Right, but not in a sense where she doesn't care, more like she's at peace with it. So whatever happens, she's at peace with that. And then you're saying the diplomat, that's man, there's so many names.
It's pretty impressive. You have all of these different female characters, and all of them being unique. But tell me about your main character.
Right, Nova. So the way
Nova's cool.
Thank you. So the way how we got her name was because the title, my dad was like, how about you just have the title based off the character? So I was like, okay, because originally the name of the character was Juniper, right? So I'm thinking, so the book's supposed to just be called Juniper. And I was like, no. And I was like, Nokomis, that's like a moon, like goddess of moon, like in like different religion. So I'm thinking, I can't just put just one name. It has to be, because if you just Google that one name, you're gonna get so many things. So I was like, how about we add something to it? Blade, like the weapon they use. So I'm like, okay, Juniper Blade, no, Nokomis Blade. And I was like, Nova's Blade, right? Because I was Googling like names of constellations. So that's how first we got the name. But as far as her character, she's more of like, in my opinion, she's like someone who lost a lot before the show, before getting into the show. And then she has this attitude where she's more like, oh, she doesn't care about things. And then throughout the book, she starts caring about things. It's just loss after loss, especially for all of them, right? You get thrown in that situation. So at a certain point, she's just like, whatever happens, happens. But then she starts caring. Like, so her character is more of a person that's like, again, so for because of the loss she had in the past, she's like, whatever. It's like she's got like in a sense like a doomsday or like a stoner, just
You're really like nihilistic.
right, like whatever. Like there's no point to anything. So her getting thrown on the show, it kind of wakes up a little bit like, oh my god, my life is in danger, because it's for before the show. Obviously, she's like, whatever, I don't care. But by her actually seeing her life is in danger, she kind of like takes more of an action in her life. You know what I mean?
Okay. So staying on the character topic just a little bit more, who is your favorite character? And similarly, who is your least favorite character?
Okay, let me think. Favorite character? Let me think. It's gonna take a while. I never really thought about that. Let me think.
Could also just be the character that was the hardest to write.
Right. Who was the? I would say my least favorite, and I mean like main character, people who actually. I would say my least favorite character, honestly, would be. I'm sad to say it, but Lysa. Or, if I'm pronouncing it right, it's funny.
Well, you're the author, so you tell us how to pronounce it.
I mean, because it's Lyssa, right? I mean, I can't. I'm thinking that's how you spell that's Lysa or Lissa or something. But I would say
for the people, how do you pronounce it?
see, I can't say.
Make the decision.
Okay, Lysa. I would say, I don't own the name though. I don't own the name. But I'm thinking now there's someone with that name is gonna be like, that's not how you say my name. But she's my. And when I mean least favorite, I don't mean I hate her. That's not what I mean. But just in terms of like, if I'm looking at the show, right, even as a viewer, like, I'm talking about in the world of Nova's Blade, and I'm someone watching that TV show called Last Valkyrie, I'm thinking, man, get Lysa out of here. Just because in a sense where, like, she appears kind of weak. But that's the funny thing about that is like, there's like this backstory to her that they kind of mention on. So you kind of like understand why she's like that. So I would say, again, she is my least favorite character, but again, it's like more of a sense where it's like, okay, you're kind of like, you're doing more harm to yourself than good. Like, everyone's trying to survive, and you're like doing more harm to yourself. It's not that she's dragging anyone else down. No, it's more like, lady, wake up. Like, this is your life. You got act.
Oh, so she can't handle it.
Exactly.
And it's a little frustrating.
Right. So it's right. And again, not saying I hate her. No, it's just that if I had to choose a least favorite character, because honestly, I think all the characters are well done and actually like all of them. But in a sense, my least favorite is Lysa, or even better, the other crazy person, Ira, in a sense where it's like, lady, what is your problem? Like, in a sense, like, you think this is a joke? Like, that would be, and when I mean least like her, it's not in a sense where I hate her. It's more like, that person is not someone you want to be friends with. That's like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I would say, as I'm answering this question, now I'm thinking about maybe Ira, because again, that's not someone you can really be friends with. That girl does not have.
So you were just sitting there writing her a character, and you write her doing something terribly, and you're like, man, how could you do that as you're writing it?
Right. She's like, no empathy, or like, in a sense, it's like, you can't negotiate with her. He's like, do you know what was happening? But as far as favorite character, I would say, Maximus, her trainer, and Maximus means great, and like from the Romans, but just in a sense where, because the world that they live in is cruel, right? You're either a victim or a suspect, or you try to rise above that. Where Maximus, in a sense where he was kind of a mixture of both, not up front, but he's a mixture of both, where he went through some tragedies that's mentioned in the book. So he had the choice to become like that suspect, which he did become a suspect. He let the cruelty of the world turn him into the person who's no longer a victim, but an abuser. And then you kind of see, as a trainer, you're looking at him like, this guy's mean. He's a jerk to Nova. But then you start learning, okay, why he's like that. So you're like, oh, he's actually a good person, and this is just his way of coaching, and he actually cares a lot about her. So to see this over the book where you're saying, this guy's a jerk, then you're like, okay, maybe there's something to
Yeah.
him, and then you finally like him. And not only do you like him, it's kind of like in a sense where Nova's journey, when how she's interacts with him, is kind of like the reader. At first they hate him, Nova hates him. Then Nova starts kind of like saying, "Okay, I need him." So the reader's like, "Okay, this guy's interesting. We could use him." And then at the end, it's like Nova sees him as someone special to her, and then I feel like that's how the reader would. She's like, "Oh, he actually means something," because without him, she probably would never made it that far. So that's one of my favorite characters is Maximus, and also because he's named after Maximus is like in the movie Gladiator by Russell Crowe, which I loved. But again, that name is like a real name from Rome.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool character.
Thank you.
And so to move on just a little bit, there were sometimes the main character, Nova, has some interesting expressions or sayings. Two things I noticed was one that she listens to, quote, 21st century classical music, and then also says, quote, deuces, and throws up a peace sign. So I have a few questions. One, what year is the book placed in?
Yeah, it takes place in 2100, like around 2170s. So the 70s in the next century.
Got
so
it.
2170s.
Okay, and then second, what genre of 21st century music does Nova listen to?
So I never really thought about that, but I would say it would have to be like. Because again, I'm basing this kind of off of my experience. So when I'm writing the book, right, I'm listening to like epic music or something like Hans Zimmer. So that's like the music she could be
Got
referring
that How to Train Your Dragon music
to.
track playing.
Yes, like some stuff with the violin. So that's pretty much like the kind of music she listens to, like Howard Shore, Hans Zimmer, James Newton, and like them people who compose movies. Those would be kind of people she'll be listening to.
Okay,
Because I
and
like
then
that kind of music.
and then is she, because she literally goes deuces to someone, which I feel like is a very colloquial term. Is she one of those people that thinks they were born in the wrong generation?
That's funny. I would say she does feel disconnected in her world. When she was younger, she was really connected, and then after the tragedy that happened in the book, she before like the actual book starts, she now is like, I hate this world. She just looks at everything that's bad. So it's not like she automatically said, "Oh, I belong another decade," but it's just like, or century. It's just that she's disconnected from the world she lives in. But it also plays on her awareness and knowledge because she's like aware of the culture before, because there was a part in the book where I was going to have it where they were asking her what would she rather be, like a gorilla or a tiger. So I was going to have it where she would be like, "What's a tiger?" alluding that the tigers are extinct by then. So the dude had to explain to her it's an orange cat. But I was like, wait a minute, if I want Nova to be like this smart character, she should know what a tiger is because she has the internet. So I took that part out. So it just shows that how like well knowledge she is.
Right, so she's kind of like a history buff.
Like, yes, because she was reading this book. I don't know if it was in the advanced reader copy, but she was reading this book. It was like basically by the last American president. So she was reading the memoir of that man.
Okay. And so then to kind of move on to the next question, there was an interesting kind of, I don't know if I would call it a subtopic, but a subpart of this story. There was this underlying idea of what's called e-dope, which for the audience and for the listeners is basically drugs, but they're electronically taken by USB port. So my questions for you is, one, what made you kind of think of this for the story? And two, wouldn't a USB be old tech at this point?
That is a good question. I never thought about that, and that's a good question. I would say this is one of those things where now I ain't gonna lie, though, I'm just shooting from the hip, like for that aspect, because in my mind I'm thinking, okay, we have drugs, right? We have vaping. What would be the next step from vaping to, because I'm thinking, okay, if it's in the future where people are kind of like augmented, right? So people got mechanics in them. How would you transfer like something to a human being if we're like, so whatever, something that allows the person to be mixed with some kind of machine. So I'm like, okay, USB, like a USB port, because it's like, okay, computer, you stick the
like
USB.
you're downloading
Exactly, because I wanted to put the downloading aspect to make it show how much, instead of saying, oh, I ingested this, right? That's all like flesh, right? Physical, right? You ingested smoke or something. But by saying, oh, I downloaded this, it shows that line between human and machine. So the point of me saying e-dub, right? Like electronic, and then also gigs was just to again show how these humans are becoming machine like. Because you're like, downloading. That's something a computer would do. Well, that's the point, to show you that, well, these human beings are becoming like computers.
Yeah, so people don't just blur the line between machine and human when it comes to, like limbs or something like that. They blur the line between machine and human when it comes to things as simple as certain drugs or medications or things like that. Okay, that's really cool. And so then just some last questions for you is, one, will there be a sequel? All right. Are you currently working on it?
So, go ahead. Sorry about that. I think I cut you off.
No, you're good.
So I do have a sequel in mind, but I'm not working on it at the moment. My main thing is just marketing the book, but I do have a sequel in mind. I don't know exactly the whole story, but I do see it. I mean, I do see it where she's basically kind of, in a sense, on the run, but also the world, like, you're getting more of a look at the world that she was in. So there is a sequel in mind, yes.
Awesome. And then when will Nova's Blade be available for purchase?
Oh, so it's available. It came out February 1st.
Oh, awesome. That was only a few days ago.
Yes.
Congrats.
So thank you. So it's on Amazon. Type in Nova's Blade by Will Scifi. It's on Amazon for Kindle and print.
Awesome. And then is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
The only thing I would like to say is just thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it, and any support I get, I appreciate that. I feel like writing the book, a lot of things go into it, but at the end of the day, it's all about the stuff that people give back to me. So, like, the ideas I get from my dad, the support I get from families, main importantly, God and Jesus. I believe, like, my creativity, whenever an idea comes to me, and I'm like, where did that come from? Personally, for me, I always want to thank God for that. So again, this is just nothing but support and love for, like, again, for whatever, no matter how small or big, if anyone support me in a sense of saying congratulations or buy it, I just want to thank, because again, although, I wrote the book, it's kind of like when people say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes like a whole
army.
Yeah. To push somebody, and I really appreciate people doing that for me. So, and I want to thank you guys too. So thank you very much.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for being willing to come into the show.
No problem.
That's it for today's episode of Clocked In with the Press. I appreciate every single one of you for taking the time to listen in. If you're interested in hearing more stories, you can do so through our website or Facebook at thepress.net or our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. I look forward to speaking with you all next week. This is Caitlin Gleason, clocking out.